just sending this link real quick. Okay. And we are live. How are you?
Oh, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Good. All right.
Um, let's see. Okay, so we're going to talk about school stuff. Let's actually go with the book banning first because you're on the fence.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
now I think the thing that you're on the fence about, I like to be on the fence from every angle other than my own. Well, for example, if we're talking about banning a book from just a school library in a grade school, so kindergarten through fifth,
Right.
what pops into your mind that should be banned? Because in general, you think for the most part there shouldn't be bans,
Yes.
but there are
Yeah.
some cases.
For the most part, I don't really believe in book banning, but there comes a point where like there are, again, I'm going to bring religion into it because there are religious denominations, different sects of religion, especially Christianity in America, that put basically like non-science, like literally conspiratorial anti-science into books, books they would like to have in the libraries, textbooks, talking about, like fundamentalism,
Hmm.
trying to teach kids that, that evolution isn't true and stuff. So those things like that, things that are kind of conspiratorial, um, try to go against what most of the world accepts as like scientific fact.
Hmm.
If a book is trying to go against that, I that's where I'm really struggling. Like I feel like that should not be allowed in
Okay.
school libraries. Like legitimately just um incorrect, like lies almost.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. And real quick before we go further with that topic, is there any idea of a book that could be written that you think should be illegal um, to exist in the world of not school kids? Like, is there a book I could write right now, publish myself, and just give out free to people on the street? That Are there any sets of words that could be in there that you would think could or should be illegal, or do you view freedom of speech just as anything can be written, even if it's the worst ideas?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would say, yeah, there isn't anything. I would agree with the freedom of speech part on that, in the general sense of the public. And then it's like kind of each person's duty to, take what they read with like a grain of salt, or like look into it, or I mean that's easy to say when, you we live in a community that we have access to the internet. We have literally access to look up anything that we want to and fact check. Not all communities, not all societies have that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a little tough because I mean, my brain goes to all scenarios. So, like
Mm-hmm.
in our kind of scenario, I would say, like in America, for the most part, I would say no. There's no reason to like limit that. On the other hand, it makes me think of situations like, like another government that is maybe uh, like a dictatorship that like just puts out, only allows their own things, oppresses the entire people.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, like that's getting tough. It's like, well, what is that? Is that free speech at that point?
Mm.
Not sure, but if we're talking America in general, then I would say no. There's nothing you could write that should be not like illegal to publish.
Gotcha. That's interesting. I've never thought of it from that angle of imagining the government putting out a book. That would be
Hmm.
interesting to decide if there should be limitations from them, because
Yep.
most of our, like the Bill of Rights is protections for the citizens from the government. Now I know
Mhm.
members of the government can write their own books in any way they want.
Right.
I think most do. Ted Cruz, Bernie Sanders. I think most, Hillary
Yeah.
Clinton. Most of them have put out books. But if it was put out in a sense like a a declaration from the government of opinions or something.
Right.
That's kind of interesting.
Or like
But
a history, or this is our history that may not even be factual in any way, but
mm,
the people have no way, literally no way of checking that. What it, I mean, as we know, there are places where they ban regular use of the internet, like, open use of the
mm,
internet. So like, how are people going to fact check their own government if their government is putting out things like.
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty wild. Okay, so let's go back to the school thing. Now, okay, so we've talked about religion, sharing ideas that counter science.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else? Do you think language should matter? Should there not be books that, like, something like 50 Shades of Grey that has sexual or, you know, f bombs or whatever? If a parent of fifth grade or younger doesn't want their kid to freely access a book that even just has the f word in it once, should that be up to the parents to decide, or is that more of a school board decision?
Kind of thinking about this for the first time now that you're asking.
Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah, it's thinking it's good.
Um,
I remember when I thought about these things for the first time, and
yeah,
it
I have
excited me.
I have my own opinions on just general use of curse words, if you want to call them that. Like
Mm-hmm.
that to me is like not that big of a deal, or it shouldn't be. I don't think it should be that big of a deal. I don't have kids, so let's just put that out there. I don't have kids, so I can't really come at it from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I think sexual content, I yeah, no, I think fifth, like elementary school age, it shouldn't be allowed, and that would be more of a school board. Like, yeah, we're just not what if parents, like, I mean, it probably wouldn't happen, but what if like a bunch of parents voted and wanted sexual content in the schools?
Mm.
That wouldn't be very good.
Gotcha.
Would move
Now
town.
that's interesting. I've never thought of it from that angle. I always think of it from the angle of, if the majority of parents don't want something in, should that be respected? And I usually lean towards yes, but the majority wanting something in, that's interesting.
Yes, because
Hmm.
again, my mind goes a little bit to the religion thing. Like, if a majority of people in a there are whole townships where the majority of people do want, for example, um anti-science things in the school, like it to be taught
Mm-hmm.
in the school in some capacity. So that's where I would say
Mm,
we should kind of have more of a general, like, no, like in America we don't teach anti-science, and that's kind of the way it is. Um,
gotcha.
so I would definitely want to safeguard against potentially harmful things that most parents want in the
Mm-hmm.
school. Um,
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think so too. In fact, I don't know if I think the that parents should be able to decide anything that they specifically want. I think it's more so the other way. So I think schools should be a way for children to be educated, and I don't know exactly how we decide who's best for deciding that, but something to do with how the political system works. You have people that are voted in to decide these things, so they can look at the studies and figure out what the best way to teach math is, or what what the most important objective things there are to teach. For the most part, objective.
yeah.
So and then after that, I think it just comes down to there are cases where I think the parents' opinions might matter in some cases, like the book thing. So, okay, so we're thinking anti-science is out, 50 Shades of Grey or anything sexually explicit is out.
Yeah.
I think you're right about the language, like the curse word thing. Like, it's not a thing I care about personally. And it changes over time. So whatever was a curse
Yeah.
word like 200 years ago, we just think sounds silly now. So if kids
Right.
started using it, most parents wouldn't care. And
Or the other way around.
yeah, so a lot of it comes down to like intent and
Yeah.
what people mean by the words when they're using them, and also if the kids are causing a disturbance with it. So yeah, curse words are complicated. Okay, so what about racially related stuff? Do you think there should be anything Like, so some people would say that there shouldn't be things that, there's a lot of kids' books that are trying to be more positive that people think shouldn't be in there, like, because they think it's trying to tell, like, white kids that they're racist and they don't want their kids to have to see that.
I get
But
it.
if we have something like that, should we also be able to have the other way around where there's like a kid's book teaching people to be racist? Like so
Uh,
should so anyway, so what do you have any stance on race in kids books in a grade school?
yeah, yeah. I think I would have to say something literally pro racist or pro sexist, or like anything in that nature should not be allowed in especially in elementary school, because before your brain reaches a certain like level of development, you don't you don't really have the you don't have the skills yet to think as critically as maybe like a high schooler would. Like a high schooler,
Mhm.
you could have Mein Kampf in a high school, and like the context can be known. A high schooler could read that and have critical thinking about it. Not
Mhm.
that that's like the level that a third grader could understand very well, but if they could, I think it's too young to allow something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Now, so then the question comes down to who decides these things. So if you think that, but and let's say a bunch of other parents think that, but then the school board doesn't think that. Do you
Right.
think because I guess that's another thing we actually kind of might need to talk about that's kind of separate from the schools is like in my mind there's certain protections that need to be had for children. Like parents can't beat their children. You can't tattoo your children. There's a bunch of protections that mostly are connected with the idea of like violence or something like that. But aside from that, parents have like you have a child, and obviously you could decide not to take care of your child. You could put it up for adoption. But if you
Right.
want to keep your child, as long as you're not starving them or harming them, you get to parent pretty much in any way you want. Like, so me and you would probably agree that it's more moral to not raise a kid religious or something. Like,
Right.
even if you are religious and you hope they will be, wait till their brain has developed enough so they can think for themselves,
Yeah.
and then share some idea like I'm religious and this is what I think, but I want you to think your own thing, and then
Right.
maybe that kid will be and maybe they won't be. But legally, would you agree with me that it's probably best to not prevent parents from taking like their kids to church and raising them religious? And it's okay if you disagree and think we could put a ban in there somehow.
Yeah. Honestly, so I struggle to think about how it would be enforced in an okay way. However, there are so okay, we try to protect children from certain like abuses. So would religious abuse or trauma count? But what would count as that? Like, if you I don't know, it's really hard to it's very nuanced because like for example, I would consider like, like growing up in an environment like a cult, let's say, like a cult religious environment where like you are taught that you are a filthy sinner. You grow up with like you're given shame as you grow up. You're taught, that you are going to hell if you don't act this way, that way. Your friends are going to hell. Or you're not allowed to have you can't make friends that are not in our religious group. If you leave one day, we will excommunicate you. How acceptable how acceptable is that to subject children to that? Like if you
Mm-hmm.
become of a certain age and you've decided to join this religion, sure, okay. But if like you've got a 5-year-old that their brain is developing and you're putting these ideas into their head that's going to cause them actual actual religious trauma, which is a thing,
Mm-hmm.
later on as they're growing up, how acceptable is that? I would want to say it's not. I would want to say we would want to protect kids from extremes like that. How you would do it, I don't know.
Right?
But
Yeah.
I would really want that. I would really want it to be like somehow illegal to put religion like that on a child until they reach a certain age. And I'm not really sure what
Mm.
that age would be. Maybe I don't know, maybe after elementary school
Mm-hmm.
age, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and like so I personally don't agree, but I agree with some of the ideas within it. Like I, being raised religious, had some ideas that I now think are horrible that were kind of brainwashed into my into my brain that I wish didn't happen to me, and it took me a few years longer to understand it than maybe most kids that weren't brainwashed would. So I definitely have reason to want what you're saying. When I play out all the ways it could work, I don't think it works. This would lead to, so if we were going to say that you can't take anybody under the age of 8 to a church because of the brainwashing or whatever, then like if a police officer, in the same way that they might spot somebody not wearing a seatbelt and pull them over, if they see somebody pull into a church parking lot and take a kid in and then they go verify their age and then the parent gets arrested for the kid going to church. Now we shouldn't not do it because it sounds silly. It only sounds silly because anything that's like modern change always sounds
Yes, that's
silly.
true, that's true, yeah.
Um, but it also, I just, and we also shouldn't not do something because of slippery slopes. But the concern here, I guess, is mostly a slippery slope situation where it's kind of like free speech. You could say, let's ban something that we might all agree on. Nobody needs to use, like the N word or something.
Yeah.
But then we're saying, okay, we used to have free speech, and now we have free speech except one word. Might as well add one more word.
Yeah.
And so having the limitations on what parents can and can't do. One example is after basically the invention of serial killers in the 70s, there became this thing where parents were referred to as helicopter parents. They were super
Oh,
freaked out and they were worried their kids were going to get killed. And
right.
so for a lot of parents throughout the 80s, 90s, and maybe even more so today, parents won't let their kids go anywhere. They'd rather their kid be sitting in the living room on an iPad than to run outside and play because they're
Right.
worried kids are going to get kidnapped. And then other people will swear by the studies show that kids that run out and play and are kind of dangerous will grow up being more social and have better skills for the future. Now, at one point in time, somebody could argue, oh, if you let your 8-year-old go out and play by themselves, you're a bad parent and should be arrested. And then somebody else could say, if you let your 8-year-old use an iPad in the house, you're stunting their social growth and they should be arrested. So I think that's why when it comes down to what should be illegal for parents to how parents parent their kids, it's very specific. It almost always comes down to harm or endangerment. Like there's things like if you have a child, like an infant, up to a certain age, height, or weight, their car seat has to be rear facing because of the studies showing how likely their necks are to snap in a wreck or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's something that you're legally forced to do as a parent because we can know the risk of harm to them. And you're putting them in the car, so you're putting them at risk, so you have to give them specific safety. But outside of that and not being able to be abused in these kind of things, it's kind of hard to know what details would say, okay, you are now your child is being removed from you.
Yeah,
Um,
because, like, yeah, well, I obviously it's difficult to know where to put lines, where to draw lines because, like what would you think about like a situation where like obviously there's physical abuses, but there's mental abuses. What if there was a
mhm,
parents who like they never physically abuse they gave them food, they gave them like everything they needed physically, but every single day for a whole hour they made the kids sit in a closet in a chair and they stood there and screamed in their face for an hour and told
yeah.
them that they were terrible, a terrible person, and you're going to go nowhere in life, but then everything else is great. Everything else is great.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
to me would constitute like, okay, that can't happen. That's abusive. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's like if you go from there, I don't know, like where do you make the cutoff? Because that I would
Mm-hmm.
consider an issue.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly where the cutoff is. Now, the sitting in the closet, like I know people that still do something that's kind of a little old fashioned, where if their kid's acting up, they'll have them go stand in the corner. They'll basically put their nose on the wall, and they'll have to stand there, and it sucks, and the kid hates it, and uh, and so anything like that, I don't see any limits mattering. Um, but uh, but yes, I think you're right as far as the verbal stuff. If somebody's just like calling their kid nothing and they're horrible kid and they're gonna, there has to be some limit. The problem is it's all
Right.
so subjective that I
Yes, it
don't.
is.
It must be a thing where there's loose ideas that are written down with. I don't know what the group is, like child CHS, maybe Child Health Service. I don't know what it is. Anyways, there's some kind of department
CPS?
that the what is it?
CPS?
CPS.
Child
Oh,
Protective
Child
Service?
Protective. That's right.
Yeah.
Where if somebody if they get a call and they're told like, "Hey, my neighbor has an unsafe environment for their kid," then they'll come out and they'll see. And most of the cases, I think, are somewhat similar to either the violence or the risk, like the car seat thing,
Yeah.
where if you go in and you see in the house, there's like, it's so dirty that there's like maggots crawling on a dead cat in the corner or something like that. I think that falls into the same category as safety, because just if the environment can be unhealthy. So if
Yeah.
there's cigarette smoke 2 feet from the
Mhm.
child or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as asking the kid what the parent says, I think it's complicated, but it would be interesting to see if it was recorded. If a kid had like somehow had like a
Mhm.
recording device, maybe if we're talking about like a 8-year-old and they have a cell phone and they record their parents like kind of verbally abusing them.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see to what level a kid gets removed, because I know sometimes like foster care get so filled up that they'll even think it's best to leave some kids with like meth head parents and stuff.
Right.
So I would have to guess that meth is worse than a shitty parent saying shitty things. But I mean, it's true. I mean, you will grow up very messed up if your parents are constantly just
Yeah.
being
And
horribly verbally
yeah.
abusive
And
to you.
that I feel like kids should have a certain level of protection against. Again, I don't know how exactly you would do it because at what point is the parent not able to say, "But this is my free speech." I don't
Right?
you know? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky. I don't know I don't know what the right answer is. But yeah, I guess the reason I branched off into that topic of like how much like control, basically, aside from being to a certain degree verbally abusive, but physically abusive and putting a kid at risk, um, parents basically the things they choose for their kid, it's basically the same freedoms they have of choosing things for themselves. Like anything you do that's not hurting somebody else, it's not an illegal act, you can do for yourself, and then you also get to choose that for your kid. Like your kid doesn't get to choose to stay up playing video games till midnight or whatever. Like you get to choose these acts for your kid, and then as soon as they become an adult, they choose their own.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about a kid being sent off to school, it's kind of interesting because now like because somebody could homeschool their own kid, and then they'd basically have control over everything. There wouldn't be a school library. And then
Yeah, yeah,
so if we're deciding when somebody goes to a school, what should a school be? And we have this idea that we like as a society, we want these fire stations and these police stations and
yeah,
these different things to help people.
yeah,
We want this thing we think is good. So if we have schools, we want there to be a certain thing happening, but we don't want there to be something that we lose control of, something that we have the right of. So if we have the right of our kids choosing, my kid can't play, like for example, if a teacher hands out candy in school, like they give the kids a sucker once a day, I
Yeah.
I would say a parent should be able to decide, oh, my kid doesn't eat processed sugar. We're a
Right.
healthy family. Um,
Right.
it shouldn't be that the school can say, oh, like in the same sense that we get to have our school library books, our teachers are allowed to give candy. You have to homeschool your kid if you don't want them to have candy.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
God. Yeah. That's tough.
right?
Yeah.
So I guess there should be set things that happens at the school that specifically need to happen, and then the other things are they don't need to happen, but they can be decided. And the only thing that makes sense in my mind for this decision would be the parents deciding it, because my neighbor. Not that this is true, but my neighbor could have their 8-year-old read 50 Shades of Grey. That's not
Yeah.
probably not illegal.
True.
But then I could want my kid not to have access to 50 Shades of Grey, and
Yeah.
and so at the school, if it was there, I think the only way in my mind that makes sense of deciding if it should be there or not, if it is currently there, not that one, but just any books, would be the parents of the kids that are currently there deciding what they would not want there. Maybe by some form of vote or majority. I'm guessing most parents wouldn't care at all. Most parents don't put any time into anything like that.
True.
Um,
Yeah. That's true.
but yeah, it's kind of weird. Yeah. And here, let me pull up an example of a book. Have you heard of the Gay BCs?
I think I have, but I think I saw someone on a video talking about it. So, but
Okay.
you can pull it up because I don't exactly recall everything that's in it.
So this is pretty wild.
Okay. Oh boy.
um, so this is a kid's book, like the one where you know how like a kid's book only has like I don't know 20 pages in it, but they're really thick cardboard pages, so it's like
Yeah.
designed for like little kids.
Yes.
Part of me is just confused at why they made this for little kids.
Okay.
I am fully accepting of all the ideas in this, and oops, no zoom, no, stop it, zoom. Okay, okay. So this one for A is for Aero and Ace.
Mhm.
Words we use, this is really small on my computer. Words we use to say that love and attraction may be felt in many ways. Um, so I think, well, what are your thoughts on this?
Just this first page?
Sure, yeah.
Um,
No judgment. You can think whatever you want.
well, yeah, I mean, just from this first page, I don't see any problem. I mean, is this meant for like 3-year-olds?
Yeah, I would have to guess so. But maybe it's meant to look like it's for 3-year-olds, but it's really for 8, 9, 10-year-olds, like people,
I would
kids right before puberty. I don't know.
maybe I would be seeing with the way it looks, I would be thinking it's probably meant for like 5 and 6 and 7, just
Okay.
from what it looks like. Um, so I mean, because like they could be talking about uh kind of the more like romantic or platonic side with these because obviously I don't know. I don't have a big issue
Yeah.
with this yet, but I'm
Yeah.
assuming I will.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think they're pretty relaxed like this, where they're written not too offensively or anything,
Yeah.
but we're talking about the idea. Like it even has the word attraction. So if you're reading this to a kid, whether it's a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, or I have a 7-year-old, and then if I was reading this and then my daughter said, "What does attraction mean? Love and attraction." And then, because I mean, clearly, if it's the gay BCs, we're talking Aero and Ace, which so far it's more of a lack of attraction.
Right,
But
but
it would have to be like if you look at a human and you feel funny in your pants,
no,
like you wouldn't say that to a little kid, you know?
no, I
No?
don't
Okay.
okay, so I think okay, so we all know that even by the time you're in like first grade sometimes, you know, you can like you can like somebody. Like as a kid, you like we've all like a lot of us have experienced like, oh, I like it. Like it's not sexual, but you get this idea of liking someone. Oh,
Like
I feel
butterfly type crush
butterflies. And
type
I
thing. Yeah.
remember having like a big crush on someone in second grade.
Hmm.
Um, and to me, that's normal and
Hmm.
natural, and that's what attraction is like at that age. It's like the butterflies. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
I like you. You're not thinking anything sexual. You're just like you have a crush. So you have this little kid crush, and that's
Okay.
normal.
Well, let's role play. Okay, so you're my 7-year-old daughter, and you ask what attraction is. And then I say it's, well, actually, let's do the other way around. I'm the 7-year-old daughter. You're me. I ask you what attraction is, and you say what you just said, where it's like the second grade thing where you just like somebody,
Yeah, yeah.
and then let's say I say back to you like, oh, well, I like almost everybody in my class. Like I'm really good friends with everybody. I like them all. What do you say back? Like, what makes it attraction that you could say to a 7-year-old?
I don't Man, I've never had to do this. So I've never had I literally
I'm preparing you to be a parent, Wendy.
well, I'm not going to be. So
Okay. Well, in case your pet pig asks you these
in
questions,
case,
I'm getting you
yes,
ready.
yes, in case, just in case.
Pigs are
Um
attracted to people too.
yeah. Um I don't know. I'd probably say something like, "Oh, well, some kids," because again, I don't have to necessarily assume like, "Oh, you're gonna have this feeling," right? But I could say, "Oh, some people or some kids." I don't know if I would say people or kids, but like some kids, they end up like extra liking someone that they just like want to be around them more, and they get like butterflies in their stomach, and I don't know if they would
Okay.
understand what
They want to
that means.
understand butterflies. Okay, and then I'd say, "Oh, okay, so like a BFF, my favorite friend." Okay. And then what do you say back? So yeah, it's kind of tricky, right? Okay,
No, it
well,
is, but at
what
the
if I
same
asked
time,
what aro
you can
means?
I
Now
don't
I know what
think
aro means, but what if a 7-year-old said, "What does aro mean?" Would you naturally
personally
say aromantic or
personally, I would so yeah, aromantic. So, yeah, in that case, I would probably just be like, "Oh, you know how sometimes people like, they get married and like, oh, like you're like me and your dad or me and your mom or, like your aunt and uncle or something. You know how like they're married, some people never want to get married. Like some people
Mhm.
never want to have like a partner in life like that and live with them because
Mm.
they don't want that. That's literally all I would say.
Okay, and then what if I said, "Oh, okay. Well, what does ace mean?"
Right. That's tougher. That's like because
And then
again,
once
like
that's
yeah,
answered, then the next question would be, "Oh, well, what's the difference between the two?"
yeah,
Because
yeah, I
then that's
know,
when you
yeah.
start. And so I just feel like these are ideas
It
that
is
are more
it
of a
is a
puberty thing because through puberty
no, that's
you could
true.
think like you could have already started puberty. Your voice is changing, you're seeing different things, your body's changing, and you
Yeah.
could start being you could because of the
So
things you see around you, somebody could start thinking they want to start dating somebody, thinking they're straight, and not even realize that they're actually gay because they kind of been like socially conditioned to think
right,
straight is all that exists,
of
and then
course.
they're figuring this out and that out. So I would say something like being aromantic or asexual. It's going to be something that you figure out throughout puberty, nowhere near pre-puberty.
Well, yeah, I would agree. I would say well, so there's the whole like thing of like, oh, when do you give the talk? Like when do you do that? I First of all, I don't know. I don't know when
Hmm.
the talk should be given. Like if you have a kid, I honestly don't really know. Um, I don't know how I would approach it or what age I would approach that at. It's
Hmm.
obviously different for different parents. Like some parents probably give the talk when their kid hits sixth grade or maybe when their kids in I honestly don't know, but
Hmm.
that would be for me where it like the whole like the sexual aspect shouldn't be brought into it until until the child is mentally ready to have the talk. And I think it might be different for different kids.
Hmm.
I don't know if
Gotcha.
we can put like I don't know if we can put like a scientific thing on it, like this is the age that a child's mind is ready to learn about what sex is. I don't
Hmm.
know. I honestly
Yeah.
have no idea like what age that would
Yeah,
be.
well, that's why I think a lot of things that kids learn are, can be taught by their parents. Sadly, some parents don't teach them.
Right.
And we can get
Right.
into a sex ed thing too. That's I think that's an interesting topic. But just as far as the book thing goes, so if my daughter got this at the school library and brought it home and
Yeah.
asked me these questions, I would actually probably tell her, "Oh, that this is just another one of those things that we'll talk about later. If you want to
Yeah.
look at the pictures, you can. If you want to practice pronouncing the words, you can. But uh, but it's just something I'd rather not talk about. That's how I would
It's
handle it.
true.
I
Yeah.
probably personally wouldn't ask to have it removed from the school. But if it was slightly different, I might. But
Yeah.
if parents did want it removed from the school, I would get that. Would you think it's bad to remove this from the school if like half the parents in the grade school just said this is stuff that we don't want our kids to even be worrying about at fifth grade or younger?
Um I think if the book literally like goes into like what sex is, like kind of like okay, like then I think it would make sense to not have that there.
Hmm.
I again like I haven't read the
Yeah, I don't
specific
think
book.
it
I haven't
does, but
read
yeah,
the
let's
book.
look into some more. Oops, I clicked the wrong thing. I've actually only seen the first couple pages. Ah, stupid Zoom. No. Okay. For gay, this is a word that we're. Oh, this word's just for you if you like someone and you share their gender too.
Okay.
See, and I guess my concern here is because kids, kids like everybody, kids don't care about gender or race or anything like that. They just all kids play with everybody. Now, when it comes to liking, I think you're right. When I was in second grade, I think I had a crush on somebody, but I don't know how much of that is based on cultural conditioning, which I
That's
don't think
tough.
of as a bad thing or not. But like when you
Yeah.
see so many movies as a kid, you're watching Snow White, Cinderella, all these things, and then or if you just hear your friends saying like that they have a crush on somebody, but they're saying it because it's in a movie, so they feel like they need to say it. I don't know at what specific age crushes actually start, but I don't know if. Do you think when it comes to kid crushes, it should be thought of in the sexual orientation ways? Because it's definitely not. I mean, even
I
in middle school, a lot of kids, when they first are hearing about sexual things, they'll talk about having crushes till the end of time, but they'll be like, oh, I would never do this, or I'd never
right.
put my tongue in somebody's mouth.
Yeah,
So,
I think that could honestly, I think that could be like maybe the start of like maybe who you would be romantically attracted to.
hmm.
Um I mean, again, I don't necessarily think for kids it needs to be labeled like that, like, "Oh, this is probably your romantic attraction, Jimmy." Like, no, it's
Yeah.
just like, "Oh, you like you at that point, it's just you like someone." Like, it's like, "Oh, you have a little crush, you like someone, oh, or you like, like
Hmm.
that like,
Well,
oh,
and if
I
you
don't
ask
might
if
like that.
you like, I don't think you should challenge kids necessarily, but if you were to truly challenge them, like, what do you mean by like, they're not going to have any answers for you because I think
No,
for the
because
most
you're
part,
figuring out what that feeling even is.
right? Yeah, yeah, and who knows how much of it's based on what you see on TV or if you're just like feeling funny feelings, and
Yeah,
it's
but
just slow lasting funny feelings that will make sense in a few years.
yeah, I think it's feelings that end up making more sense later on. And the
Yeah.
other thing too is like you said, if it's like a social conditioning kind of a thing where like, oh, well, most kids end up having a crush on, an opposite gender, opposite sexed person. Oh, it could just be because that's all they see on TV or whatever.
Hmm.
But we would know like as society progresses and things become a little bit more just like equal and more like, you know, a gay relationship is fine. Like it's not like
Hmm.
ooh, like it's ooh, they're gay. It's just like, oh yeah, they're just in a relationship. It's not, it just becomes more
Hmm.
normal.
Well, okay. Well, so then I guess my question becomes like, if everything became normal and accepted, which I want it to, I want everybody to think of any feeling somebody could have can be normal. Um, I'm wondering if the terms should be used before somebody even reaches puberty. Because in my mind, because I think you're right, people will have crushes second, third grade, whatever. We call them crushes. We think it's cute. It's
Yeah.
what it is, and
Yeah.
we can write all the books about it. But is it a straight crush or a gay crush? I mean, I just feel like if people start having crushes on same gender, which is fine,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily an indication that that person's gay or straight. It's just that now what used to be a thing where people would get kind of socially conditioned or whatever by watching shows and hearing people talk to use certain terms when they might not know what exactly they're referring to. I just think when it comes to a sexual orientation, to be talking about a sexual something of a sexual nature, that should be at very least saved for puberty, which I think
Yeah.
there are some rare cases of it being at 9.
Yeah, true.
And there are
True.
some
Yeah.
cases of 10. I think maybe 11 and 12 are the most common right now. But I
Yeah.
just feel like I had a crush in second grade, but if I had a crush on a boy in second grade, I don't think that needs to be referred to as, oh, just so you know you're gay.
No, yeah, no, I
You know what
no,
you know
I
what I
no,
mean?
I agree with you. I think that we should just, in the let's say the elementary school age, it's just like, "Oh, you have a crush, that's you have a crush. Oh, you like someone." That's all it has to be. And then I think maybe middle school is when, probably the whole kinda like sex ed to a point,
Hmm.
like progressing, the sex ed thing can start in middle school,
Yeah.
probably, and
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's why I feel like these things, even though this book is doing a very good job of not crossing any lines, they're creating more questions than they're answering. Because ace,
Yeah,
arrow,
I see what you
gay,
mean.
I
I see
I
what you
feel like
mean about
that's 10 and up.
yeah, no, I think I can see what you're saying, where we kinda keep those we don't need to be injecting those words in elementary school age. Um, yeah, I can see that.
Okay, and then the last example they have on here is T. T is for trans. It's a
That's different
brave,
from that's different from, like,
the
sexual
orientation.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
It's a brave step to take to live as the gender you know is innate. That's cool to teach kids the word innate. Innate's a fun
Yeah,
word.
yeah, no, I agree, yeah.
But again, I feel like at 7 or whatever, you let kids do what they want. I would not care how my kids dressed. Now, depending on the city you live in and the school, you might not want your son to wear a dress to school if they're going to get picked on, depending on how well like. So I think it's kind of complicated. Like if I so my son is 14. My daughter is 7. And my son is in ninth grade.
Yeah.
So it's kind of once you get to high school, it gets kind of tricky. And or kind of tricky, but kind of easy. Like that's where I would start saying like, definitely do whatever you want to do, wear whatever you want to wear. Where before that, so my son in like grade school, I wouldn't want him to get picked on, and so I probably would tell him, at this school at this time, we're not going to do the dress thing, but you can wear a dress to the park. You could wear a dress at home.
So I
Um,
would probably handle that slightly differently. I
yeah,
would
yeah. I'm
probably
curious. Yeah.
say, in this school at this time, if you wear a dress, some kids might treat you mean or differently. I would let them do it, but I would
Okay.
try to prepare them. I try to be like, listen, like there are going to be people who might not like it, and I just want you to be prepared for that. But you should be able to wear a dress if you really want to. If after I told you that, if you still want to, I'm going to let you, because at that point it's not your child's fault. That's something that like the school needs to handle. I would be going to the school. I mean, like he's getting picked on, this needs to be handled.
Mm.
I think that's how I would handle it. I mean, again, I
Hmm.
don't have kids, but that's how I imagine myself handling it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, and I think this one's trickier because I care a lot more. I care more about the sexual orientation stuff as far as for the younger age. Um, but I mean, really, it doesn't matter what it comes down to. Like, my whole family's vegan, and my daughter's 7 and basically has no idea that people kill and eat animals. She
Yeah.
knows a little bit, but like I just feel like she's about at that age where she's going to start learning about it, and I think it can be good to learn about. But it's
Yeah.
kind of disturbing to tell little kids like it's tough when you don't have them. Like I guess if you're around nieces and nephews and stuff, but when they're at a certain age, it's just that they're so innocent and not knowledgeable about the
Yeah.
world. And so like even on the topics that I want to talk about, I think there's certain ages where it makes sense. And for everybody it's different. There are some vegans out there that probably teach their 5-year-olds about what people do to animals, and then there's probably some people that wait till 10.
Yeah.
And I guess if I was a parent that waited till 10, I don't know if I'd want my 8-year-old to read a book in the school library about butchering animals, even though it would be like a pro-vegan book. It's just about different parents having different times that
Yeah.
you could want your kid to learn everything to do with math and everything to do with reading and have the greatest education. But when it comes to them learning about certain topics that aren't those standard school topics, you might have your own idea of when you want to introduce kids to that kind of thing, or morals.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Um,
gets really messy with
yeah.
that. Different parents wanting different things. I mean, yeah, I don't even know. It's obviously what the majority of society does has a big hand in this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't know, or for I don't know. Yeah. Did you wanna go into the, coming out the teachers coming out? Because I don't have
Yeah.
too much more time.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't either. Probably about 10, 15 more minutes. Yes. Let's do the teachers coming out thing. Uh, yeah. I'll just give my quick stance, and then you can share your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
When I think, well, and let's. I've seen cases where teachers will come out as trans, which is interesting. Um, but I think more so it's teachers coming out as certain sexual orientations. That's the one that happens more often. And so the way I view sexual orientations, well, especially because the word sexual is there, is that it's whatever the thing is of a sexual nature. So you can have so many different aspects of relationships, but if somebody is, if you're talking about orientation and somebody is gay, we're talking about who they're sexually attracted to, and I believe so. Now, me and you had talked about the aromantic thing before,
Yeah, not
but
necessarily. Yeah, like, the word gay is kinda encompasses both,
well,
like,
yeah,
romantic and
there's a
sexual,
lot of
so
words that encompass a lot of things. From
yeah.
my understanding, currently, when people use the word queer, that could encompass gay, bi, pan, but it could also encompass like trans. People will say
Yep.
queer for trans.
Yeah,
So
that's
yes, a,
true.
a word can cover various different things. But when we're talking about the idea of somebody coming out as an orientation, and this is maybe even more of the concern, if somebody if a teacher's coming out as queer, then the kids are like, well, what does that mean? And then they're like, well, for me, it means I'm trans. And then it's like, well, what does that mean? And then they break it down. And so that could even be more complicated. But I guess I don't care how people use words. It's more so what that word is getting across.
Mm.
And the idea of knowing what parents are makes sense. People know what
Yeah,
parents are. So
yeah,
if somebody is aware that Jimmy has two mommies, that's great. There's moms
yeah.
or dads, and people can have two. And maybe in the future, there will be people who have three mommies or two mommies and a dad or whatever. Or even not even in the future, like right now, since three of my kids my wife had before I met her, they all have two dads and one mom.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, true.
so so people have different sets of moms or whatever, or dads, or however that goes. So I don't think there's anything wrong with people knowing that there's two mommies or two daddies or a husband or a wife. The concern I see, and this is just me being a person that analyzes things and gets nitpicky, but it's the idea of declaring an orientation whatsoever. Um, Whether it's saying I'm straight, I'm gay, I'm any of this stuff. I don't see any need for it. And I would say, at very least, um, I would say it shouldn't be said before middle school. I'd say I'll even say before high school, but just for sake of conversation, let's say that we're talking about kindergarten through 5th grade.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I agree. I would say it's totally fine, and I mean, as we know, and it's been totally fine for a teacher to like for kids to become aware that a teacher has a husband or something. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
a female teacher has a husband. So like, I think it would be fine. Like you said, like, oh, this female teacher has a wife. That's fine. That makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. But I agree. I don't think there'd be any reason for a teacher to be like, "Oh, by the way, 8-year-olds, I'm gay," like it
Right.
would be, it would just be like that they could find out that the teacher has a husband, like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, this teacher has a husband." And I kind of know what that because like my parents are married or I know you just know people. Kids know people who have husbands and wives. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree there.
Okay. Now,
When it
what about? Let me just cut you off for quick. What about something like asexual? So if a kid says to, like, let's say a 7-year-old says to their 2nd grade teacher, like, "Hey, are you married?" And
Yeah.
if the person is asexual, do you think it would be acceptable to say, "Oh no, I'm actually asexual," or would it be better for the teacher just to say, "Nope, I'm not married"?
I think the teacher should be able to say, "I'm not married," and, I mean, if the kid says, like, "Oh, are you ever gonna get married?" Like, who knows, then
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the teacher should use the term asexual. They could probably
Mm-hmm.
just say, "No, I don't think I ever wanna get married. That's just how I wanna live."
Yeah. Okay.
That's easy to conceptualize, you know?
Cool. Yeah, 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 yeah. Because I don't think it's good for the most part for people to share anything around the idea of sexual orientations when it comes to children, and mostly I think it's just easiest to have like kind of a rule with that, and then also I don't think it's good for people to share. I guess moral teachers to share moral stances in the same sense that
Yeah.
I wouldn't want religious people to share their religious moral
Yeah.
stances. I wouldn't want people that have my same moral stances to put their moral stances on other people. Um, so, um,
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you're coming like, where you're drawing moral stance from, like, are you
mhm.
considering
Well, like if somebody says like to a teacher, like if I was a teacher and somebody said, "Hey, do you have a wife?" And then if I said, "Oh no, I actually have a husband," um, boys can get married and that's just fine or that's okay, or if I declare any extra information that I'm telling the kid as a teacher what is like morally acceptable, um not that it matters in a sense, but I almost feel like it kind of does matter because in the same sense that I wouldn't want the opposite to happen. I wouldn't want if somebody went to a teacher that was male and said, "Do you have a husband?" And then they said, "No, I have a wife." I don't think it's good for two men to get married or something like that. Oh, and you might have cut out, or maybe you're gone. Can you hear me? Oh, I see it trying to fix itself. Oh, it sort of back. Wendy, can you hear me? Paging Wendy. Paging Wendy. Okay, I think Wendy might be gone. I think it might have been a lost internet connection. I'll stay on here just a sec in case she hops back on. Do, 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 do. Oh, maybe she's back. Oh, there she is.
Sorry.
Hey, you're good. Are
My
you
la-
able to see your frozen picture up here?
yeah, my laptop literally it didn't even give me a warning. It just died.
Oh, gotcha. So what I was saying was, with the moral thing, like if somebody said, like, do you have a wife? And I said, oh no, I have a husband, and two boys can get married, and that's okay, or that's a good thing, or something
Um,
like that. I feel like even though I agree that anybody can get married and it's perfectly okay and good and whatever, if the opposite happened, I would be kind of bothered. Where if somebody asked some like religious teacher, like let's say it was a male teacher, and they said, "Oh, do you have a husband?" Because that person maybe more often sees two dad parents or something.
Yeah.
And then if that teacher says, "Oh no, I have a wife," I think it's wrong for two boys to get married.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't want them to say what's right. I don't want them to say this is a good thing, this is right. Even on the most right things, you don't need to. You can anything in teaching. I don't think you need to. And I had thought about this for the first time like a little while back. But even something like just talking about, like stuff with like race, like it's good to treat all races equal or something. Like you don't need to say what's good if you're teaching. Then there would just be limitations to like what kids can do in school. You can't pick on each other. You can't fight with each other. There's things that you can and can't do as kids in the school. But as far as teaching, like if you're teaching history, you'd say, oh, and this is what happened to MLK, and that used to be where black people had to drink from different drinking fountains. And then when you teach the history, the morals will work themselves out. You're just,
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I could agree, because that's true. Like how are we going to prevent the bad thing if we don't prevent both from happening? Like you said, like someone saying that it's good to be able to have same-sex marriage or it's bad. So yeah, no, I would agree. I
Yeah.
wish, obviously, like, I wish that it made sense to just no, we're just gonna ban what we as a society think is immoral. Thinking that being gay is a sin or whatever. But because society has different, well, I mean just looking from the vegan perspective, society at large thinks it's completely fine and moral or not immoral to slaughter and torture animals pretty much for the sake of food and even to an extent, products like non-food products. So it's like, you can't.
That's a great point, because I wouldn't want a vegan teacher randomly telling kids it's immoral, but I also wouldn't want your average teacher's not vegan. I wouldn't want a teacher just hearing a vegan student talk to a non-vegan student, and then that non-vegan teacher tell the student, a 7-year-old or even a 10-year-old, well, actually, it's good for us to eat, that like they shouldn't be sharing their opinions.
Yeah.
At very best, they can. Well, and Contrarian 420 here in the comments said, the wrinkle here is that as a teacher, you are also asserting the state approved takes on historical events. And not only that, but the state approved on like health. So that's fine. If the health book this is our current thoughts as far as scientific health knowledge goes, and then the teacher is teaching it. But the teacher should not assert their personal opinions.
Yeah.
Even me, like, so I think it's unhealthy to drink milk. But if the health book was saying a certain thing, I would say this is what the health book says, and I would teach what it says, and I wouldn't say, but just so like
right. That's the thing. Like there are teachers who do that in like in the name of their religion. That definitely happens. So yeah, I would agree. I would want to prevent like a vegan teacher from being able to like, oh, but society is immoral because they do this, even though your book says that cow's milk is a great way to get vitamin D or something, what I mean? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I disagree. Like, yeah, I guess I would want to prevent that.
Yeah. Which is why, and that's a perfect example of the science and religion thing.
Yes.
Is like when I was in 9th grade, I had the greatest science teacher ever, but he was actually religious. And what he told, I think somebody in the class, actually, I might have been religious at the time, so it might have been me asking or somebody else, but where I would say, oh, I'm religious, so I was told this stuff isn't true or something like that.
Yeah.
And then his response was that he's religious too. He was a Christian, and that what science is the the best objective information that we can gather using only our resources. So have essentially, like, if you are somebody that believes there's a God, then you could say, well, what science is setting that God aside for a second, saying, what could we have figured out without thinking of this God? What could we have figured out on our own? And so the same thing works for the health thing. It's, you can be an individual that has studies or whatever, and you can know that there's some other information against milk. But so far as what's approved for the school is, we're calling milk good now. Now in 10 years, it'll, there'll be something that says we were wrong, And so I think you can take learning in various different ways, because my daughter will ask me so many questions, and I'll say, well, for this is what it is. Like, she'll love to like write her F's with this weird little loop thing.
Yeah.
And I'll say, for school, you have to do it this way. But when you do your own art and you draw, you should be the most creative person and do your loop-de-loops however you do. So in school, if the question is milk good for you? If your health book says so, the answer is yes. And then outside of school,
that is so, like, I agree, but that feels so uncomfortable to me.
It does. It really does.
That's what happened to me growing up, where literally I got the same thing, but oh, well, hey, I mean, the textbook in school, you write what they want you to write, that evolution is true and that the earth is billions of years old or whatever, but at home we know that it's all lies from Satan.
Yeah.
What I got taught, so that's why that is just like, oh, it feels so icky, but
yeah.
Yeah,
It's tricky. And everything's different. So like when you look at 2 + 2, we decide what numbers are and what they mean, so that there's an objective answer because the question is objective.
Yeah.
Where something like, how old is the Earth, or even is the Earth round or flat? I've never personally tested it. I have no reason to test it. There's no negative outcome no matter what. So I go, okay, the majority of the scientists say this, and this is the most logical, so I'm going with this. Or like George Washington, first president. There's a chance that all that was just made up and written in some book and he never existed, but it wouldn't make sense. It would be a huge conspiracy.
Yes.
So I think there's a huge difference between like taking things that are objective, like in our language, this is how we read, this is how we write, this is what a comma is, that type of thing, and numbers, those have a certain objective meaning. And then something like history or science or whatever, they have their own. And so it's just complicated. And I think, especially when things are constantly changing. Anyways, I don't know what I'm rambling about right now, but I think it's interesting to discover and think about how we view truth and why we do, and how we view the difference between something that is never changing objective truth versus potentially changing. We could find out in 10 years that there's something healthy for us that we never would have thought was healthy now. And yeah. But I better let you go. You got to get to work.
I'm gonna leave for work in an hour.
Gotcha.
Ready, but
okay. Well, yeah, it was good talking. Let's talk again soon. And I'm curious, after you think some of this stuff over, and you brought up a couple points that I had never thought about that I want to go back and listen to again and think over.
I'd like to hear if you get an updated viewpoints from the things that.
Yeah, I update my viewpoint every day. But yeah, you always bring some curveball challenges I'm not expecting, and so that's always fun.
Thank you. Yeah.
There was something you brought up in our abortion talk that Jeremy from our group always brings up that I can't remember. I think it was the referring to like the pressure from family and religious stuff. But there's another element too, and he always talks about how you destroyed me on
really.
that talk.
I'd like to know specifically what it was, because I don't know, but now I'm curious.
If you watch any of my talks with Jeremy, he brings you and that up every time.
Really?
So
I have to look at that then. My life is so busy, I don't see a lot of the stuff, but
yeah, no, it's tough. And I talk to people way too often and too long, so it's hard to keep up with it all. But
it is hard. Yeah.
But I love talking, and I'll talk to you later, Wendy.
Yeah, okay, great. We'll talk again. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Take care.